So what's going on, Todd?
Jesse, thanks for having me on, but I shouldn't be here, right? I mean, first of all, this is an illegal immigration issue because likely of Biden's lawlessness at the border and everything going on down there. That's why Indiana, as a non-border state, has actually filed several independent lawsuits on that. Then we have the rape, and then we have this abortion activist acting as a doctor with a history of failing to report. So we're gathering the information, we're gathering the evidence as we speak, and we're going to fight this to the end, including looking at her licensure if she failed to report. And in Indiana, it's a crime to not report, to intentionally not report.
So you guys, this is the latest chapter in this entire saga surrounding this 10-year-old girl who was raped in Ohio. This story's made international news, I believe, at this point, especially after Roe v. Wade was turned. Raped in Indiana and had to escape a United States of America state to go to another in order to get abortion services for being impregnated by her rapist. And you know what conservatives are talking about? Well, the guy who raped her is an illegal. Well, first off, it didn't happen. I think Jim Jordan was tweeting about that. And until they found out that it did happen. And now you have the Attorney General of Indiana, the state that actually did the right thing, or at least a doctor in that state did the right thing. The Attorney General there is now talking about her as being the problem. Well, let's find out exactly what this doctor did and that he's so upset about. By the way, that AG of Indiana is Todd Rokita. Let's remember his name, because let's go ahead and since he wants to put his face in the news, let's go ahead and remember his name. Anyways, let's go to what happened with the doctor, because a local Indianapolis news station, Fox 59, located this quote terminated pregnancy report that he mentioned you have to file if you're gonna do things like this. There it is, what do you know? It's like somebody did their work and discovered what was happening. Different than this Attorney General. So there, that whole thing is, there's proof of that there. So this terminated pregnancy report that was obtained by Fox 59's Angela Ganote shows that Caitlin Bernard, an Indiana obstetrician gynecologist, reported the abortion on July 2nd. 2 days after the abortion was performed and within the 3 days required for termination to be reported to the Department of Child Service in the Indiana Department of Health. In that report, Bernard also indicated that the child suffered abuse. Again, things that conservatives in this country just don't care about, at least the elected officials here like this guy. Anyway, some more. So attorneys for this Ohio abortion doctor that did the right thing also said this isn't gonna keep happening. So let's watch more.
Can you tell us the latest, the status of any legal action against the Attorney General who, in your words, has smeared the doctor?
Unlike Attorney General Todd Rokita, who is both a politician and a lawyer, we're going to do our homework, gather the facts, and research the law before we start leveling accusations and filing cases. So the first step in that process, we took just within the hour, I believe, we sent Mr. Rokita a cease and desist letter demanding that he stop smearing my client and falsely accusing her of things that she hasn't done.
It's almost like they're openly and blatantly lying about this entire thing to try and change the narrative and exactly what the problem is. Because as people were talking about as this happened, the whole overturning of this right, things like this would then fall into place. And then as it has, they can't focus on the reality. Just like with the gun issue, let's go ahead and deflect every chance we get. Now, by the way, the Attorney General out there in Indiana is not the only problem, but the Ohio one is also another. But first, David, let's get your thoughts on the first couple videos we saw here.
Well, a couple of things to be clear. I'm from Indiana. I still have family there, and even people that I'm not friends with in Indiana even say a lot of hardcore Republicans would tell you away from the cameras that Todd Rokita is a moron. This is a guy who only wants to be governor. He will use anything he can to try to build up his own profile, and that's what he's doing here. The fact of the matter is, Indiana, unlike Ohio, did not have an automatic trigger law. The law against abortions in Indiana took some time to go into effect. So there was a window of opportunity. So it was the logical step for a young girl and an advocate of hers to leave Ohio, go to Indiana, have the abortion performed, which was legal at the time it was done. That's the bottom line.
And by the way, we'll be looking at Indiana to see if they're looking to change that, because oh my God, someone had some rights and actually got a chance to do this one thing as far as the trauma that was caused from her rape, but they don't want that part to be taken care of. So I mentioned David Yost, who's the Ohio Attorney General. This is what he had to say. Ohio Attorney General David Yost said that his office has not found any evidence of a 10-year-old rape victim in the state who, according to reports cited by President Joe Biden, was 6 weeks pregnant and traveled to Indiana to receive an abortion. These were made on July 11th, before, of course, the arrest was made of the culprit, and also proof of this happening was put out. So he said it just didn't happen. More, he said not a whisper has been heard of a report filed for the 10-year-old rape victim. As an Ohio provider, would be required to report any case of known or suspected physical, sexual, or emotional abuse or neglect of a child under state law, is what he also said. We have regular contact with prosecutors and local police and sheriffs. Not a whisper anywhere. Something maybe even more telling, Jesse. My office runs the state crime lab. Any case like this, you're gonna have a rape kit. You're gonna have biological evidence, is what Yas told Fox News. Jesse Waters, who was also interviewing that other attorney general off the top. He says there's no case request for the analysis that looks anything like this. Weird, because this case was reported to law enforcement again, as we already pointed out before, but almost 3 weeks before Yost had all this to say. More, a police detective testified that Columbus police were made aware of the girl's pregnancy through referral by Franklin County Children's Services that was made by her mother on June 22nd. And then abortion didn't even happen until June 30th. And then after that, we have July 11th, when these attorney generals and these officials are talking about it didn't happen. Oh my God, look that way. And what they haven't said yet, David, is the 10-year-old was raped. Our laws and trigger laws went into place and would have forced her to have her rapist child, and we're okay with that. Oddly, only like 4 conservatives have been honest enough to then go on TV and say, yep, you know what? I do believe in that. I do believe in giving the rapists more rights than their victims. And that's a shame.
Well, it's also a shame that there were Republicans and conservatives for many weeks who said, no, this couldn't have happened. There's no way, this is too perfect for the liberals. This must be a fabrication. There was a Washington Post story that said, well, it's based on one source. And with that, Fox News and the rest of the conservative media ran wild. And they bring on this attorney general from Ohio who clearly would rather spend his time booking his appearance on Fox News than actually calling the Columbus Police or the Department of Protection of Services to find out whether this really happened. And they go ahead and further this claim that no, this couldn't possibly be happened. This must be a fabrication of Joe Biden. No, the fact of the matter is this did happen, and the attorney general of both Ohio and Indiana, their naked political ambition is clear, and their absolute revolting prioritizing of their politics as opposed to the rights and the values of a little girl. That should be evident to everybody now.
Outrageous that this is where this is turned. We'll see how much further they dig themselves in these holes in order to protect themselves from these were such obvious repercussions and consequences for what they've done, that once these repercussions and consequences start happening, they're like, I did kids, it's impossible. They can't really believe that this wasn't gonna happen, because this is the part that talks about how everyone is a pedophile. That isn't them, and then they're raping children. Except when it actually happens, you go, oh my God, that kid's a liar. It's a shame.